Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Staying Close to Your Customer, the Consumer Edition. This webinar is focused on helping companies stay connected with their customers and community during this unique time. I'm Heather Hall. I'm an entrepreneur in residence here at Jumpstart, and I focus on software and technology companies. Have worked with 3 startups as a founder, 4 startups in total. Spent a good chunk of my time helping commercialize technologies out of Bell Labs, both for Lucent Technologies and AT&T New Ventures. Have spent a good chunk of time in marketing technology, working with big brands that you all know. I'm very passionate about anything that's revenue aligned, sales, marketing, retention, things like that. So with that said, I'm going to stop talking. You're not here for me. Want to go around the horn and introduce each of our panelists. Quick 60 seconds, name, background, and what you hope to share. Julius, we're going to start off with you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Julius Dorsey. I come to you with a marketing career spanning 40 years, beginning in the agency business, J. Walter Thompson, then moving on to major brand management positions in marketing at McDonald's and Holiday Inn Corporation, responsible for things like launching breakfast or starting the Priority Club in the Holiday Inns. But that led me to my own business here in Cleveland. We're on Dorsey and Company, and we provide services in competitive and marketing strategy. The clients we serve in the consumer space go from everything from giants financial services like Nationwide or New York Life, or bigger banks that you know, down to neighborhood grocery stores, people that provide services and so forth. So the application of strategy at the high level has a lot of application to small businesses. And like my colleague Prakash will say, we're both members of the Ohio Board of Directors of the Ohio Restaurant Association. So there's application there too. Happy to join you this morning.
Great. Judy.
Thanks, Heather. I'm Judy Feniger, and my background, like Julius's, spans about 40 years. The first half in for-profit marketing, communications, and public relations, winding up running a public relations firm that dealt with a lot of the big name companies, business to business and consumer. And then I flipped mid-career to nonprofit and went to work for the American Red Cross, where in my for-profit life, I specialized a lot in crisis management and cause-related marketing, as well as general communications. So Red Cross, I'd say my 7-year tenure there was from just before 9/11 to just after Hurricane Katrina and all the disasters in between. And then I went from there to some other nonprofits and wound up at Gordon Square Arts District, where we worked with a lot of the retail and business to consumer companies.
Great, thank you. Simone, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, hi, I'm Simone Cameron, and my company is Anik Marketing Group. I started out similar to Judy in PR, and that's my background. Started out in PR, and from PR, started to do nonprofit organization and fundraising and all of that, and which led me into social media. It just naturally led into that. And so we're a digital marketing agency focusing primarily on social media marketing. And we are our clients' voice online, and we create the content for them and, just help them to make a splash on the internet. What I would love to be able to, to share with everyone today is how to use social media effectively during these very difficult times, and to make it your friend. Social media is your friend, and so how to use that effectively during this time.
Great. And Prakash, best for last, right?
Thank you. My name is Prakash Karamchandani, but everybody who knows me calls me PK, so you can call me PK here. We're all friends. I am the co-founder of Balance Pan Asian Grill. We're a 5-unit fast casual concept based and headquartered in Toledo, Ohio. And we also have one aquaponics farm. It's located in downtown Toledo, where we grow some of our own product, and we have a small distribution company located in Maumee, Ohio. So we have kind of a unique restaurant enterprise I'm here to share my perspective on the ground. We are still up and operating, and we've made a lot of really quick operational changes to do that. So excited to share.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to warn everybody. We did a little bit of a prep call yesterday, and this is a talkative crew. So I think you're going to get a lot of good information. We are not lacking in thoughts and opinions. So to start this off, consumer's a little bit of a different beast than business to business, right? A lot of this is could be considered nice to have. Retail, if it's not things like medication or necessities of operating your home, things like that. Services like cleaning or landscaping. In my realm, selfishly, a lot of the technology companies that I work with are fun, lightweight, consumer focused types of plays. So in the concept of being a nice to have versus a need to have, which right now we're really focused on need to have, what would you want to tell the companies that you're talking to think about in this time? Specifically, how do you adjust that thinking of, you know what, nobody needs to come in and buy this widget today, but there's something else I could do. Or what if I did X? I want to start off this rotation with Judy and Julius, and I'll let you guys banter back and forth because Julius, I know you have some perspective on playing the long game. And Judy, a couple of the companies that you know well in Gordon Square do some really interesting things. So would just love to hear your thoughts on that balance of need to have, nice to have, and communicating with your customers during this time.
Sure, happy to, Heather. You know, one of the things that I think is important is to try to figure out where you are relative to say, launching your business. And I use that term a little bit advisedly because right now, everybody has the potential to relaunch. And so, you know, if we were relaunching, we wouldn't all start on a day. We wouldn't all say, okay, everybody, flag is up, we're going on Thursday. That wouldn't happen. You'd be gauging this relative to what you can do, what's right for you, etc. And we'll come back to all that. And then I want to touch though briefly on something Heather said about like to have versus nice to have, like versus must. Obviously, if it's something that they'd like to have, we've got a tremendous need to fit in, except our customers are in extreme disarray. So for me, I think it's important that we just take a settled view. If you're an open business, don't make changes that don't look like you. Let the customer come back to something they recognize, but perhaps constrain so that you can control your costs and so on and so forth. And be in touch with them in the meantime. Tell them what you're doing for your employees, what you're doing to prepare for them when they come back, what you're doing for them, and maybe your outreach to other people. That's a tremendous way to stay in touch, I think. Judy?
Well, yeah, Heather, of course, is right. We got to really talking yesterday, and we hope that today will be the same kind of thing where we're having this conversation with you. But we kept each having a lot of great examples of companies who are either doubling down on what they do because what they do happens to fall within the broad range of things that are now needed and wanted, groceries and delivery services and healthcare and things like that. And then there are lots of businesses that really took a pivot. Whether that turns out to be a temporary pivot or permanent is yet to be seen. And the pivot might be in how they communicate. I guess almost everybody is pivoting in how they communicate because very few companies, big or small, have done the range of communications, and without the face-to-face now, they have to rely on other things. But other companies are just saying, what can we do? And to Heather's question about need to have versus nice to have, what can we do that is needed now? What can we do to be part of the solution? You know, there's an adage in communications that you can either be in a crisis, you can react, you can respond, or you can initiate. And a lot of companies are initiating ideas, and the one that I have been talking about this week is called Yellow Cake Shop. That's a fashion business, locally owned, female owned fashion business that immediately started making masks. Now, a lot of people are now making masks, and that's great, but they were one of the first, and they reached out to Dave's supermarkets long before the CDC was saying everybody needed to wear a mask. Did a relationship with Dave's, and now the Cleveland Clinic has come to them to make 10,000 masks. In doing that, they were able to keep their business open, keep their employees, which are sewing machine operators and others, busy, do something to help the good, have a point to communicate and to market their business and say, this is what we can do now before we pivot back. So I think the nice to have and need to have, the first question is what you're doing in your normal course of business something that can contribute to the effort naturally? If not, what skill sets do you have that might be able to make that contribution during this pivot, which may turn out to be a longer term opportunity?
So Simone, as Judy talks about the nice to have and need to have, and I'm looking, we have the fortune of seeing the primary industries of who's participating. And a little over 50% of the folks on the phone are either service or restaurant food service related. And a lot of them are operating honestly, in a need to have. I think of a client I have who's running a business to business cleaning company, and he's going into UH and cleaning every day. That's a need to have. How do you message those sorts of things and do it in a way that's relevant, is meaningful, but then stands out from everybody else? Because we've all gotten the what we're doing to respond message, and they all sound the same.
Right. So regardless of if you are nice to have or need to have, you have to stay relevant, right? And so you definitely cannot bury your head in the sand. This is not the time to do that. And so a lot of people might feel, what I'm hearing from some business owners is that, I don't know what to do. It's a tough time, and so I'm not going to do anything. That's really the worst thing that you can do, is not do anything. You definitely don't want to bury your head in the sand. What you really want to do is you want to be relatable. You want to connect with your audience. The thing that I've never seen this before, where everyone practically around the world, we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same situation. I've never seen that before. And it could be even a national holiday. There's not really, a national holiday where everyone is celebrating at the same time, right? Or, so this is something that we're all in the same boat. So, you've got to be sensitive. You really have to connect with people. Even if you're in need to have, you really need to offer discounts to people, right? So if you're able to offer discounts, this is the time to be able to do that, right? Mm-hmm. If you're a nice to have, the reality is, and it's kind of harsh to say, but the reality is, if you're not essential right now, no one really cares in terms of selling to. Don't sell to me, right? I don't want that unless you're offering me discounts, right? Then that's okay. I went to a retailer sometime this week, and their prices were regular prices, and I was like, oh, you're not offering discounts right now? I'm gone. And so it's all about being sensitive to people. And if you are a nice to have, I think this is a perfect opportunity for you to offer tips. So, one of my clients, she's a pet groomer, and so obviously they're closed because it's not really essential for her to be open right now. But what we're doing is we're offering tips for people to say, we understand that you're home with your pet right now. Here's what you can do in terms of grooming your pet. And so we're telling people, we're giving away some of the secret sauce, right? So people really appreciate that. And the reality is, they don't really want to be grooming their pets themselves, and so they will be back even though you're giving them tips and ideas. So nice to have. This is a great opportunity for you to just offer tips and connect with people. This is really the time for people to see you, see your face, and really connect with you. So those are ways that you can engage with people.
PK, our resident operator.
Yeah.
I'm not going to grill you. Instead, we all played straight man lineup for you. Tell us a little bit about how, one, you responded to this, but two, how you have adjusted your communications and your operating structure, and honestly, don't yell at me for sharing, but you're doing well through this. So tell us a little bit about what you've experienced and how you've adjusted.
Yeah, so luckily enough, I have a lot of family who works in medicine, and we come from India. My whole family comes from India, but we spread all over the world. And so I had family in Hong Kong and Singapore, and they were sounding the alarms back in January. And my brother is a physician, and he was telling me back in February. So I created a 3-phase response plan and distributed it to all of our employees in late February. And we started communicating heavily about this to the public at the beginning of March. Phase 1 was all preventative, how we're stepping up our sanitization efforts, glove changing, all of that stuff above and beyond what's required. And that was pretty early. That was the first week of March. And at that time, I think people were still kind of like cynical about COVID. I got we write these really lengthy, very detailed, very transparent social media posts. And it goes into a ton of detail. And I had initially some comments that were later deleted, people being like, well, that was completely unnecessary, this is a hoax, whatever. I would get some like laughing emojis. A week later, all that stuff was gone. And our phase 2 was social distancing. We actually started doing social distancing 48 hours before it was mandated and switched all curbside. And then phase 3 has been our employee tracking kind of safety system, how we're scheduling in clusters. And a lot of that phase 3 we released in a lot of detail for other restaurant operators. And we also opened up a Dropbox with all of our kind of COVID training and preparation materials that we released to like kind of open source for other restaurant operators. I think that process that we did while also stepping up our, I don't even want to call it marketing. I mean, it truly is just like communication with our customer base to let them know that we are doing stuff. Like we're not just like sitting here and everything else is acting like normal. We're on it. We take your safety seriously. We take our employee safety seriously. We were doing other things early, like temping employees and having a log for it, relaxing our sick leave policies. We paid all our employees more per hour, I think like $1 more per hour, pretty early on. Since then, obviously things have changed. Things change like every single day, especially when you're operating right now. It's kind of crazy. So initially our sales did take a small hit, but we never went under a 10% decrease. We're currently operating as of yesterday at a 22% year-on-year surge while operating 2 out of 4 restaurant locations. So we have less cost centers. We also switched to going app only. So we have a mobile app. Before this, our concept was pretty well suited for this pandemic. I mean, I guess as well suited as a concept could be. We did 50% of our revenue through our mobile app pre-existing, and 80% of our food was takeout. So it was not much of a pivot. Some other things that we've done are stock essential grocery items and make them available through our app so that you can get that curbside. And we did that with all local producers so that we could help them out, because that all started because our milk supplier hit us up and said, hey, I've got all this extra milk. Any chance you want to put cheese on the menu? And I was like, well, we can probably move that milk faster than somebody else can. And true enough, we did. And then we stocked ice cream as essential, because ice cream's essential right now.
You've been to my house.
Yeah, it's needed. So I mean, we just kind of every day is a new change. We have to update our business model. We have to be really communicative over social media, very detailed. You know, shooting some type of content every day is really important. So you know, we've got somebody on our staff doing videos every day, even if it's basic explanatory stuff, like this is how to use our app and this is what you do when you arrive in our parking lot. Just making it as easy as possible for customers, reassuring them that it is that we are taking steps for their safety. But equally as important is the stuff that we do behind the scenes, is making sure our employees are comfortable. So like I said, like the sick leave policy, the increased pay. We also have done a nightly conference call every night at 10 o'clock that everybody can join in, whether or not they're choosing to work, whatever their situation is, just so that everybody feels like they're part of a community, but also it allows us to then rapidly change our business model. So we've incorporated changes that we've wanted to do for like, probably like 3 or 4 months that normally we would have gone through like 30-day planning and release sessions and just kind of done them overnight. And luckily it's worked out so far.
And this is me virtually high-fiving you from 100 miles away. So as we were talking, a question came in, and this is a good one. We talked about it a little bit yesterday in concept, but the question is, what do you do if you're a seasonal business? This one specifically is summer, and the season's most likely going to be delayed. And Julius, I think this falls square into some of what we were talking about yesterday. What sort of messaging should I be thinking about? Realizing that social distancing is probably going to be the norm this summer, and I cater to bigger groups. How do I prep those communications that allude to the fact that I might have a delay coming, and how do I stagger that in a way that can keep me engaged?
Well, there's two issues there. One is most seasonal businesses have something to do with the customer going someplace to do something. And of course, I shouldn't say most perhaps, but many. And that is going to be influenced not just by their desire to go and get out and do things again, but it's also going to be constrained by their fears and what kind of regulation and policy and behavior we see with the progression of the virus. Because obviously we could go down and then come back up, which just creates a massive additional complexity. So I think that some of the things that Prakash mentioned are very important. You're talking about preparing for the customer if in fact it's a place that they have to visit. You're trying to settle them to let them know that you're being sensitive to what they're going to encounter. If it's some sort of other business that's seasonal, clearly you need to make sure that the market understands you are ready. You are actually open for business. And that doesn't mean that you're marketing in the classical sense. I think it's very easy to think that people are tired of hearing the same message. But right now, that message is what's on the minds of almost every person. You know, what am I going to find? How am I going to do it? Can we go back to doing things we used to do, etc. So I think that if you're seasonal business, that also means you're driving and riding on some expectations. And it seems to me that you want to try and explain to, again, your current customer base first, people you know, and people who are near you, particularly if it's geographically based, that they can expect to find the same kind of value, the same kind of experience, same kind of rapport, relationship that you had before, adjusted for this new reality.
Absolutely.
Again, I'm speaking a little bit more about existing businesses.
Yeah.
So,
Simone, you want to interject there?
Yeah, so not knowing what this event is, or I think just using the buzzword right now, which is pivot. You absolutely have to pivot, right? And so this is a perfect opportunity. You've got some lead time right now. This is a perfect opportunity to talk to your audiences, especially if you're on Instagram. This is a great way, whether it's in stories or whether it's in your feed, to talk to your audience and ask them, how can we make this, maybe a virtual event, right? What can we do to still make this happen? Obviously, if you have people who are coming out to your event, then you have an audience that cares about who you are and what it is that you do. So ask them, what can we do to make sure that this happens? This is the perfect time to talk to them, let them know that this is what's coming up, and we believe that maybe we won't be able to go back to business as normal. This is really our new normal. And if you're paying attention to what's happening out there, a lot of businesses and organizations are changing the way that they do things because of the situation right now. So case in point, there's a lot of churches right now that are adding online church. And going forward, whether or not we go back to normal, they're still going to have an online church. My kids' school, they're now going to be offering online school. Whether or not we go back into in-person school, they're going to have a virtual school, right? And so this is going to change the way that we do things going forward. We're not just going to go back to exactly the way that things were. A lot of things are going to change going forward, and we've got to change with the times. So if you're having a tough time figuring out, how do I change with it? How do I adapt? Ask your audience. We don't have to all be experts, right? And there's no shame in asking for help and asking for ideas. There are a lot of people out there who will be more than happy to help out and give you ideas. So ask them, what is it? How would you like to see this evolve? What can we do to make sure that something still happens?
Yeah. So Judy,
Heather,
we talked, oh, who was the,
I just wanted to add, Simone was right on that. If your seasonal business and the season isn't starting tomorrow, you've got a chance to find out what the market wants so that when the season arrives, you actually have it. I'm sure everybody's expecting there's going to be changes. I can't imagine anybody doesn't expect there will be something changed. And probably in their minds, they're thinking, well, gee, it would be nice if it could be this way, that way, the other way. Well, certainly you'll know much better how to serve the market if you find out what's on their mind. And I think that can be done in a number of ways in your outreach, whether it's formal research, which probably nobody wants to participate in too much right now. But if you listen to what they're saying, you can kind of disaggregate that and put it into buckets of preference and options and features and service interaction that people would enjoy. So depending on your season, could be a great runway for you to get ready as others who have to immediately respond don't have.
Yep, agree. So yesterday when we talked, Judy and I started laughing a little bit about my ridiculous love for Gordon Square, which if you guys aren't familiar with Gordon Square, it's on the near west side of Cleveland. To me, some of the companies that are coming up out of Gordon Square are a really interesting situation in that these are physical locations. You walk in and you browse the store, you buy the good, you have a beverage or what have you, and have seen some really smart, scrappy behavior out of a handful of retailers and restaurants in the area, thinking about how they can serve, how they can stay engaged, knowing that they can't sell. And there's some really interesting examples. But one of the things that we talked about yesterday that was so exciting is how they keep what they're doing in line with their brand. And that goes back to a lot of what we were talking about with identity and what's important to you. So I would love Judy and PK, because both of you, this is top of mind to you, but how do you have that pivot, as Simone alluded to, that pivot of conversation, and stay true to your brand, stay true to who you are, because the other side of this, that brand's going to stick with you. So what you do now is important. Would love your take on that.
So I'll continue the Gordon Square conversation because I mentioned Yellow Cake, which is a Gordon Square business. Fount is another one that makes very, very high-end leather goods. But again, they have sewing machines. So they pivoted to the relevance, the immediacy, and the importance of making masks. And right now, and for the next few weeks, making masks and other PPE will be important. But they did it in a fun, interesting way, all on social media, reaching out to their audiences and saying, hey, we're gonna, if you do this, because to do this, we need help. So collaborate. We talked before about collaborate. Lots of interesting collaboration. If you do this, then we'll enter you in a drawing to get one of our purses, one of our products. And again, has great value. But the other thing you mentioned, restaurants, and in Gordon Square and everywhere in every neighborhood, everything is becoming a little more geographically based and a little more social media based and a little more listen to the customer base. So the restaurants are coming out and figuring out, what do people want? What do they need? And to PK's mention about milk, as you talk to your suppliers, you find out what they have and what you might be able to retail that might be different for you. We also in Gordon Square have theaters, and they're a great example of businesses that are not totally seasonal, but somewhat seasonal, and that require lots of people getting in a room together, which many of us wonder, when that will happen again. So they're talking about things like, can you do things outdoors during the summer when the weather is nice, and assuming some of the restrictions are lifted, are there some things that you can take outside, which hopefully will assuage some of the concern about the closeness that you would have sitting in a seat next to somebody. They're postponing their benefits. Near West Theater had their big benefits scheduled. Not till August, but they immediately said, by August, this isn't going to be happening. And the work that we have to do to prepare for it isn't going to be happening. So let's move the date, bounce the date into the fall, which a lot of people are doing. And then how do we get online and provide value? So one of the things they do is a circle, sort of like a friendship circle, which is a physical thing where they get people together a couple times a year and people from the neighborhood. And it's a very communal and emotional thing. Well, you can't do that now. So they did it online. They did a virtual circle and they communicated it. Same with performances. They can't do new performances, but they can go back and show pieces of previous performances. And so a lot of the art museums are doing virtual tours. You can't come to see the exhibit, but we can walk you around. We can put a curator online. And so I think that's what a lot of people are doing to try to say, how do we get past this seasonal dip, spring and maybe summer, and still provide relevance and connection with our customers.
Prakash, you have PK. I'm going to reprogram myself. PK, you have an interesting perspective here, but I'm going to remind everybody you're living it live. So tell me a little bit about your how does this tie to your mission, your perspective there?
So some of our core values are just being transparent, which, like I said earlier, really detailed communications are really important for us. I've done Facebook Lives and, like I said, a lot of text-based stuff. We've been donating to hospitals. We were one of the first to do it here in Toledo. We started the week of the shutdown. Most of that came because, like I said, my brother is a physician. He works in an ER, and like within the first week, they told him to come to work with an air mattress and that he wasn't going to leave. So he's been there for a minute. And then the next morning I woke up and I saw somebody on Facebook saying, hey, we need food for nurses because they're shutting down cafeterias in here because they don't know how to properly, safely produce food in a hospital environment. And I was like, cool, I'll bring out food. And then that obviously has spiraled and people are doing that nationwide and stuff. Not that we started that or anything, but definitely here in Toledo, we were one of the first, which was cool. We've now done that in Cleveland. Adding the market, like I said before, again, just trying to be thoughtful about things. Governor DeWine said, leave the minimum number of times that you need to, and grocery stores are a little bit more dangerous of a way to get your food. I mean, they're not social distancing super well. They're not regulated for sanitization the way that restaurants are. And so doing curbside, at least if you're going to get dinner for your family or lunch, and then you're able to get your essentials is great. That has also allowed us to plug in fresh produce from our farms. So that normally was not business to consumer. 50% of the produce that we grew in our farm came to our restaurants. The other 50% went to grocery stores and fine dining, and fine dining has obviously collapsed. Well, not entirely. That's going to be my second example, but I'm going to start by telling everybody about what we're doing at Balance. So this allowed us the opportunity to bring the products that we grow at Balance Farms directly to consumers, which we had never done before. We also took some of that excess product, like we had like 600 pounds of basil that we normally grow for grocery stores and distributors and stuff like that. And we turned that into pesto. So now we are selling pesto in our marketplace, which is kind of cool. So those are some of the examples of what we're doing at Balance. I'll give you another example of building your brand and in fine dining. So here in Toledo, there's Mancy's Steakhouse. They've been up and operating for like 100 years. Gus Mancy's also on the board of the ORA. And what he did, since he's fine dining, normally, I mean, his average ticket's probably like 70, 80 bucks, right? Without alcohol. So really high end, people are not probably going to get that for takeout. So what he did was really smart. He turned his operation more into like a butcher's shop, and he sells super high end meat for you to cook at home and includes the instructions for how to do that, which again drives in the brand, that his brand is all based around hand cut steaks. So nobody else can really do that. And so he's selling hand cut steaks. He's doing the same thing he was doing before, and being transparent with his customers and doing that now. And so far that's worked out well for him. So that's another great example.
Okay, great. Thank you. We've got a chunk of companies on here that are direct to consumer, that don't have the benefit of being in a physical location, the ability to walk through. A lot of these are earlier, so they're just getting started. They are just establishing their brand. They're just getting out in front of companies, and some of them might not have revenue yet. They're pilot stage and things like that. The stipulation with all this is when you're doing that, you typically don't have a lot of money, or you don't have any money. You're focused on operations and not a lot of spending. Julius and Simone, I'll put this to the two of you. Do you have any recommendations for companies who are just getting started, that they do need to stay in touch with their actual customers who are using their product and trying to get feedback and that sort of thing, but because they're at a distance and they aren't in that day-to-day engagement, they can still hopefully tastefully prospect? Do you have recommendations and thoughts for, one, how to do that cost effectively, and then two, and a little bit more of a sticky subject, how do you evaluate if you are being genuine and thoughtful and making sure that the message is not by any means opportunistic or predatory? Because that is something we all need to think about. Julius, let's start with you. I see that pondering thought.
Sure, I was thinking about that. Well, I think there's two things. You can be direct to consumer in a virtual sense, and then there are other businesses that are direct to consumer because you're going to a physical location to provide a service.
Mm-hmm.
In either case, if your budget is close to you, a little bit tight, and particularly if you're new and don't have that large a customer base, I think it's reasonable to think that next to the existing customer is a pretty good potential customer. Certainly those people are close enough together that you might be able to facilitate a little word of mouth that translates into something that you could do. It's a place you're already going from a vicinity standpoint in the physical context. But that shouldn't be overlooked. If you're going direct to consumer today, remember consumers are in a little bit different place. Some of them, a good number of them, than they were 2 months ago. They're at home. And that might present an opportunity to communicate to a group of like-minded people, recognizing that there is some continuity of behavior and other demographic characteristics in neighborhoods, and that would be true commercially as well.
Mm-hmm.
In the virtual sense, though, I'm going to suggest maybe Simone has some ideas that if you're going direct and the audience is scattered physically, but you're still going direct to them individually with service, I'm sure there are some things to do. And in either case, right now, collecting information, I can't tell you how important that's going to be, because all the consumer behavior right now is unsettled. It's not like people know exactly what they're going to do next month, and then they're going to keep doing that. That's not going to be what's going to happen. There's going to be continued change, and so the need to monitor continuously, I think it's going to be here for quite a while. It was always here in my mind, but for now, very, very important to keep yourself focused relevantly.
Simone, what do you think?
So this is, social media offers a great opportunity for those who are just starting out. When you look at other forms of traditional marketing that can be very expensive, whether, if you're a startup and, you likely don't have the big budget to be on television or to be on billboards or, to do any of those other forms of marketing. And then when you look at even print media, how do you even track that, right? Like how do I even track print media and track even a lot of these things, like track television? Like how do I track how many people have actually watched my ad rather than they got up and they went to the restroom at the time that my ad was on television? A lot of it is hard to track. But social media allows you the opportunity to be able to track a lot of that stuff and also be able to do it for, I don't want to say little to nothing, but a fraction of the cost of those traditional forms of advertising. So you have a plethora of opportunity on social to be able to reach out to potential customers and also to connect and talk to your existing customers. So one example is if you've got existing customers, you can take your customer list and you can put that into Facebook, into the back end of Facebook Ads Manager, and actually target your customers. If you've got a special message you'd like to convey to your existing customers, you can do that. Or you can do lead generation ads, and lead generation ads are ads that you can do online that can, once you've done the ads, they'll give you the name, the phone number, and the email addresses of people who are actually interested in your product or your services. right? And so there's nothing more than gold right now when it comes to content marketing than to actually get that kind of data from people out there. And so it's a great way to be able to prospect right now, is by doing those ads. And you can do it for, some of the ads online right now can be anywhere from $20 to $500. The more you put into advertising, the more you get out of it, right? And so the nice thing with advertising is on social is it's test and adjust, right? And so if I were brand new to social advertising, I wouldn't start with my biggest budget right away. I would start small, and then you look at your analytics, and then you adjust. And the nice thing is you can duplicate, you can do A/B split testing where you can test, some of your images with a particular audience and, see which one resonates the best. And then you use bigger budget to advertise to those audiences. You absolutely have to. So I think that the lost art with advertising is to look at your analytics, right? So a lot of people just advertise and then they leave and then they look at oh, what did it get me? But you really have to dive deep into the analytics, and that's why they're there. They will tell you whether or not how relevant your ad or your messaging is to your audience. And so it gives you a relevancy score. And if you're low on the relevancy score, then you know that you're not being relevant enough to your audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you really have to look at that analytics and look at how are people engaging with me? Are they engaging? And for example, if you're doing a video and people are watching the first 5 seconds of your video, you didn't do a good job of capturing their attention from the very beginning. So there's a lot that you can gain from looking at the analytics that can tell you what it is that you're doing right or not doing so right. One of the advice that I have for those who are starting out as well is to do some benchmarking. Before you get straight into advertising, look at what your competitors are doing. And you're not looking at what they're doing because you're trying to copy them or mimic them. You want to do it for inspiration, right? And so you're looking at what they're doing. You can analyze. I always thought that I would be great at this huge advertising company because I could look at an ad and tell you what you did wrong and what you should have done better. So look at what they're doing and get some ideas as to, they should have done this, or this didn't really work so well. So look at it for inspiration and make sure that you're doing some benchmarking. It's a great opportunity to be able to do that right now.
So Judy, I'm going to ask a follow-on question to you. And we talked a little bit yesterday about a question I got from a company that makes jewelry. And they obviously can't open their store right now. They had a lot of foot traffic that generated interest. And the owner said, well, I'm thinking about doing from home kits. How do I roll that out? How do I message that? How do I do it in a way that's helpful? Hey, you're at home and you've got time on your hands. Here's something to keep you busy. And how do you strike that tone between being helpful and buy my stuff? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that when this all first began, that was really a huge concern because we all started getting inundated, and we've talked a little about focus and targeting. And you don't need to be inundated. At the same time, you have opportunity in a jewelry business or anything that can be a make at home. They say puzzles are having a huge renaissance, and everybody's looking for puzzles and trading puzzles. You can't find puzzles. People are looking for things to do. And with kids home, people are particularly looking for things to do with kids. So making a kit, if it's a jewelry business, if it's a craft business, you're seeing a lot of the painting and craft stores and things coming out with a kit is a great idea. You're seeing restaurants come out with meal kits instead of just saying at the beginning it was here's our menu and what do you want, and that was great. But even greater is here's a dinner for 4 and here's what's in it and here's how you prepare it. And just like PK was talking about the meat market. So I think for any kind of project that can be done at home, people are doing all sorts of painting and decorating and home repair projects. Well, wouldn't it be nice to have a kit that says, okay, here's your transform your room in a day kit. And you don't have to think about it. All you have to think about is, okay, A, B, C, D, or cooking. Everybody's cooking and baking, and people are texting me and saying, my yeast didn't rise, and why is that? So, and if you could do a kit that's available, somehow take out curbside available shipping, etc., I think that's a real opportunity now.
So basically what I'm hearing, Judy, is you're the reason I had to change out all the shelf paper in my kitchen last week.
Got
We're
it.
gonna have words offline.
Great project.
What you got,
Great.
Simone?
So I absolutely love the idea of that take-home kit for the jewelry store. And that's what we're talking about with pivoting, right? And just making sure that you're being relevant right now with your audience. So what's happening is there's people are having birthdays every day, right? Just because we're in this pandemic doesn't mean that life stops, right? And so people are having birthdays. So it's my niece's birthday on Sunday, and we're having a Zoom party, right? And so she likes to paint. So we're gonna, making sure that, so it's like, go in your garage, go in your basements, dig out what you have. And, because my daughter likes to paint, we've got lots of canvas at home, and we've got lots of, paint in that. And so we're all gonna paint together. But wouldn't it be awesome if we were able to get like that jewelry kit, and everyone together can design their jewelry, and then, we can showcase it to each other. Look what I got. What did you get out of that? And what did you make? That would be so great to be able to do that. And so I love those examples of people not taking advantage, but really helping people out during this time, because, we really want to be able to connect with people, and that's a great way to connect. So that's an awesome example.
So at some point, life is going to, I'm not going to say it's going to go back to normal, because the world as we know it is changing. But there's a benefit out of this time, and what we as marketers, as business owners know and learn now, and how we carry that forward. So PK, this is very top of mind to you. As you look forward a month, 2 months, 2 years, what have you, what will you carry forward out of this experience, and how you talk to your customers, how you adjust your offerings and things like that, that you feel like will make you better?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I'm glad you brought it up, because I don't think it's ever going to just snap back to the way things were pre-COVID. Customers are, in a weird sense, quick to adapt and slow to change. So I know that sounds weird, but they're adapting right now. And when they are not forced to adapt, there's no stimulus, they don't want change. So it's a weird kind of creative tension there, where right now everybody's changing, everything's changing, and when it goes back to normal, like this curbside thing is probably not going to go away. They're going to want things curbside. Dining rooms are not going to be as big. People are not going to immediately just say, okay, like, let me just sit next to somebody I don't know. I mean, that's going to be a thing for 2 years, realistically. So we're not going to see crowded dining rooms, and we're going to have to socially distance in our dining rooms coming out of this. They're going to want to see sanitizer in your stores still for a year after this. Having these take-at-home kits, I mean, that's some seriously genius ideas in there. And that should probably continue to happen. We'll probably start retailing our sauces and doing stuff at home. I just don't think the new normal that comes out of this is going to be some gray area mix between what was there before and what everybody is doing right now. And if you're not participating in what's changing right now, definitely keep a close eye on it, because that's going to be the new customer expectation.
And you make a subtle point that I think Simone hit on a little bit earlier as well. And this is the unsexy side of marketing, but measure, 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 measure. Always be aware in that eye to what is working and what's not working, because there are things that you can learn from this. So Julius, I want to ask you, because you had some great perspective on this, for a company that might not be open right now, or might be a little bit quieter, and they're in the work on the business instead of in the business mode. Do you have anything that you would challenge them to be doing or thinking about right now to take advantage of some quiet time to do some productive things that they might not have time to otherwise?
Sure. One of the sort of unsung benefits of this terrible situation is the fact that people should have time to take a look at their fundamental business model. Two reasons to look. One, it's going to be responding to a different marketplace, but there are going to be markets that are ahead of us. These might be global markets. They may be consumers in other geography in the country or around the world. But you can stop to say to yourself, is my business model set up to address the market that appears to be forming ahead of me? Because that's, of course, where the model is going to be stressed. With some of the government programs and so forth, again, it might not be necessary to open and engage the market in a transactional sense. The first day the government says, okay, everybody, you can come out of your homes. You're not required to do that. There will be some that can benefit from taking the time to analyze, making adjustments in a controlled way, and then opening. Because people are going to be changing their behavior back and forth as they bounce around. So that's one thing. The other thing, and this may not sound like marketing, but from a strategic standpoint that we practice, it definitely is. Take a look at your suppliers. They're under stress too. Know which ones are going to be strong or weak, who you can really depend on and who you can't, who's going to be prepared to be agile with you. Next to your employees, suppliers are the next most important. Strange as it may seem, customers number 3. So you obviously have to align the internal operation and your essential suppliers to the platform that you intend to deliver. And I think we've all been talking about measurement. I actually think it's more like aiming. And let's face it, ammunition is not in great supply right now, and we can't afford to miss. And so for me, this is definitely time to measure twice and cut once. And again, you might have an unusual luxury of time now to do that measurement, make appropriate adjustments, put it out there, and then to PK's point, measure as you go. Don't just measure and say, okay, I've got it fixed. The market's not settled. You're going to have to keep on making adjustments, and you want to guide them with objective information, not guesswork.
Exactly. So we've got about 5 minutes left, and I want to go around the horn, and I want to pose 2 questions to you. You got about 60 seconds, so you got to keep it tight. Give me an example of one company you think is doing really interesting or creative things during this time to stay in touch with their customers. So that's one. And 2, if there's one thing that you would like to see everybody do right now, either in or on their business to help during this time, what would it be? So I'm going around my horn, top right. So Judy, I'm gonna go Judy, Simone, Julius, PK.
Thanks, Heather. I think that the one thing that I would advise people to do is what we started out with, and that's listen. Listen to your customers, your suppliers, the marketplace. Be empathetic, be transparent, think about what's happening to other people, not just you, and then you're going to come out with some of these things that you can initiate with and sort of be ahead of the game when you go back to whatever the new normal may be. And I'm sorry, what was the other question?
A company you think is just doing really smart or different things.
Some examples. I'll use a national one instead of local. There's a million great local examples. Spectrum Cable, not any of our favorites maybe on a normal day, but they came out to their customers and they said, we're going to give you free Showtime and free Epics for a month or something for the duration. So it speaks to people being at home, speaks to going to existing customers and showing them something you can do, speaks to how do you build your business for the future when this is all over, et cetera. I think companies that are looking forward and saying, what can we do now? What can we give away free or at a discount? And that for them, I don't think costs them anything, I don't know. And then how can we position for the future?
Simone, your wise piece of advice and somebody who's just nailing it right now.
So what I would love to be able to see businesses do, like we know what's driving the traffic on social or online anywhere right now is videos. So I would love to be, this is the time for businesses to be creating those kind of content, creating video, whether it's live, you're able to do live, or able to do recorded video, this is a great opportunity to do that. And if you're a restaurant, for example, this is the time to go behind the scenes to show people, here's my kitchen, here's what we're doing to keep you safe, and just to showcase, like, look at what my employees are doing, and just to make, reassure everyone. You might not have been able to do anything like that before, but this is the time to pivot and be unique and showcase what's happening, and do that behind the scenes, so people can be comfortable with ordering food from you. So I would love to see businesses do more videos right now. That's really going to set you apart from everyone else. One company, so there's a client of mine that's a national pizza brand, and what I love is one of their locations, they said, you know what, they're in South Carolina, and they said, we want to show love to the people in our community in South Carolina. So we're going to do a drive-through for 3 hours. The mayor came out, the police came out, and they literally had cars drive through, on the grass, and the employees with gloves on and masks on, they handed free pizza, a large box of either cheese or pepperoni pizza, to people in their car windows. So people just literally, it was like a drive-by. People rolled down their windows, and then they handed them the box of pizza. They said bye, and they were gone. And that was it. We didn't want anything from you. We just want to show you some love and give you a free box of pizza. Go back home and eat your pizza.
That's awesome.
loved it. Yeah, that was a great example, and that worked really well for them.
Julius, your wise insight in a company you think is doing incredibly well right now.
Well, I've got to go with Judy's example, and let's recognize. By the way, one of my startup experience was in a wireless cable venture, so I can appreciate this. Spectrum, over the short run, is not going to pay any more to Showtime and whoever else it is that they're giving away for free. So this, in fact, is a great trial inducer. This is so smart for them as a bottom line revenue generator, yet it speaks to the environment. And so that's a big example of fit. I think it's really important to recognize that these things have to fit on both sides. So everybody can't give away everything. I want to give another example from the restaurant industry, though, but it's a general one. I'm just really happy to be a part of that industry, because one of the things they're doing is showing how much they care for their employees. There's a lot of media about, what the income opportunities are for employees, but a lot of these operators have turned to help support their employees during this time, over and above what the state's doing, feeding and preparing and making meals available. And I think that just puts out a message to the public that, there's something else to this feeding site called hospitality. So these are the things I think can connect with us from a brand standpoint. I'm going to sound like a broken record on the one thing to do. There's two of them, though. Be in touch with your current customer to understand what they need and want, but keep doing it. The road ahead is not straight and it's not flat. And you're going to have to be prepared to change. And you certainly want to be armed with as much objective information as you possibly can be, because your margin of error is smaller in this rapidly changing environment. So protect yourself, protect your employees, protect your brand by measuring first.
PK, bring us home. You can't reference balance. You got to talk about somebody different, even though it's awesome. Tell me something different.
I appreciate it. I'm going to give you 2 points, and then I'm going to give you an example. So my 2 points are, and this is, I think, a summation of everything that we discussed today. If you're mission oriented, or even if you're not mission oriented, now's the time to speak your mission. And 2, be socially conscious. And I mean, like, be tuned into what's going on in the world right now. Even if your business is on pause or at sleep, or you're a startup and you haven't really gotten out there, you really need to be like in tune with what is happening right now and the experience that your customers are going through, and be there to help. And so here's my example. Before this, we were quickly approaching 200 employees, and at 200 employees, you really need a good HRIS system in order to kind of manage your benefits and all of that kind of stuff. And we were shopping 2 of them. One of them, I'm not going to name drop because I don't want to slam anybody right now, but one of them kept us on the sales call list, and I kept getting emails and calls, just like nothing in the world was happening. And when I answered the call, she was like, "Why aren't you interested right now?" And I was like, "Coronavirus." Like, what do you mean? How is that even a question in your mind? And then her response to that was, "Oh, is that really affecting you right now?" And I was like, I gotta hang up, because I'm gonna flip out. Like, I don't even want to say anything that is gonna, just not be myself. And then you've got another one that managing employee records is a secondary part of the business. Primarily what they do is manage the benefits side, but to provide a complete stack solution, they had an HRIS component to it. And what they said was, for 90 days, you're on our sales list. For 90 days, you've been shopping us, have our platform for free and give it a try. We know that you're bringing people on and you're taking people off a lot right now. Let us help you with that process.
Mhm.
And they both offer basically the exact same platform. They offer the exact same service. And that's an example right there of do it really well, show your value to your customers, understand what your customer's plight is, and by all means, do not be tone deaf, because you're going to get some, I'm normally a pretty nice person, but you're going to end up with some pretty nasty feedback.
Well, that's a great way to close it. Bring it home, PK. I want to say thank you to all of you for taking the time, for sharing your perspective and your feedback. It's been incredibly helpful. For those of you who listened in, there are resources available to help out if you have follow-on questions, things like that. Would ask you to go to jumpstartinc.org. We have a bunch of COVID-related resources that you can peruse through. More specifically, if you have questions that weren't covered or want to drill in on things, email us at askanexpert@jumpstartinc.org, and someone will get back to you and help you out based on what you need. Thank you, everybody. Be safe.